Hello everyone, it's me Uncle John. Today I am going to read 660-64, The War of the Wars, Chapter 6. At last I went to my room and put on dry clothes. I drank a little whiskey and sat by the window. The tall college towers were gone. Now I could see the area around the pit. It was lit by a strange red glare. Huge dark shapes moved to and fro. They looked very busy. The whole countryside nearby seemed to be on fire. Flames were everywhere. A sharp smell of burning was in the air. Yellow boxes were lying near the railroad tracks. What could they be? Then I knew. A wrecked train. I watched those busy shapes near the pit. Were they Martians? Were they machines? Was a Martian inside each one? Then I thought of human machines. How would they seem to a smart monkey? To a smart monkey. Oh, this was not so different. Only we humans were the monkeys this time. I heard a scraping sound and saw a soldier in my garden. Hist, said I, in a whisper. Who is there? He whispered back. Where are you going? I asked. Trying to hide, he said. Come into the house. I let him in. Then I locked the door again. What has happened? I asked. They wiped us out. He said, just wiped us out. Sit down, I said. He did. Then his head went down on the table. He began to sob like a little boy. I let him cry it out. When he stopped, he told me his story. He had been with a large group of soldiers, shooting at some Martians during the battle. The soldiers' horse tripped and fell on him. He fell into a hole. At that same moment, the heat ray hit everyone around him. He was the only soldier left alive. The hole had saved him. I had hurt my back, he said. I lay still a long time, scared out of my wits, and with the front part of the horse on top of me. At last I got up. Then I saw that not a man or a horse was left standing. Every bush and tree around was burning. It was horrible. Later, he went on, the heat ray got the town too. Did you see any other people? I asked him. Yes, he said. I saw a few, burned, hurt, in a panic. The poor soldier hadn't eaten all day. I found some food. We ate in darkness. We were afraid that the Martians would see a light. Chapter 7. Dawn came. 3 giant Martian machines were still working in the pit. Now and then, a puff of green smoke rose into the air. The fires had become a dull glow. Destruction was everywhere. We agreed that the house was not a safe place to stay. The soldier would head to London to find his regiment. I would go to Leatherhead. The soldier knew we should take along food. We stuffed our pockets, then we crept out of the house. Everything that was not dead or blackened was burning. Here and there, things people had dropped. A clock, a slipper, a silver spoon. At last, we met an officer and 2 soldiers. They were riding to the pit to fight. What is going on? The officer asked. Our big gun was destroyed last night, sir, said my soldier friend, and all our men and horses except me. I am trying to find my regiment now. You will see the Martians about half a mile down this road. What are they like? The officer asked. Giants, sir, monsters, said my friend. 100 feet high, 3 legs, and a metal body. Get out, said the officer. You must be kidding. You'll see, sir, they carry a box. It shoots fire that kills. My friend described the heat ray. It is true, I said. The officer didn't know what to think. That was clear. We'll see for ourselves, he said. He thanked us, and we parted. Soon my friend and I were in the town of the Byfleet. It was far from the heat ray. People were slowly packing to go. Carts and wagons were everywhere. One man was packing dozen pots of flour. Soldiers were trying to make the people hurry. 6 large cannons were pointed toward Woking. There was a pile of shells nearby. The farther on, we saw soldiers putting up a wall. and more cannons. The bows and arrows against lightning, said my friend. They haven't seen the heat ray yet. We went on to a town where two rivers met. There was a crowd of excited people carrying all sorts of goods. They were all trying to rent boats to cross the river. A big ferry boat was packed with people. What is that? Cried a boatman. We heard a thud of guns. The sound grew louder. The fighting was all around us, but trees hid the guns from sight. Suddenly, we saw a rush of smoke. We heard a shattering blast. Then 1, 2, 3, 4 of the metal Martians appeared. One held a terrible heat ray machine. People saw the monsters. They were struck silent with horror. Then they started to rush into the water. I turned and ran to the beach. Get on the water. That was it. People from the boat splashed into the river all around me. I raised my head to breathe. That's when I saw the Martian with the heat ray. It was walking across the water on its long legs. The monster was about to shoot its heat ray at the town. Would it hit the soldiers? No, they hit the monster's head. The Martians inside it must have been killed, but the headless machine kept walking like a drunken monster. It smashed down the church tower. The heat ray was locked in one of its tentacles. Then it fell into the water with great force, and boom, it blew up. Water, steam, and metal flew into the sky. A yell of terror made me turn. 4 other Martians were coming. The guns fired at them, but this time there was no hit. I ducked under water at once. I stayed under as long as I could, but I had to breathe, and the water was getting very hot. When I came up, I saw the other 4 monsters standing in the water. They were bent over the dead Martian machine. They care about each other. I thought I was amazed and wrong. What they wanted was the heat ray. They got it. They fired it back and forth. Houses, trees, and sheds crashed and burst into flame. Just then, the white flashes of the heat ray turned toward me. The Martians fired it all around me. They licked up the people running out of the water. Once again, I was not hit, but the water was boiling. Screaming in pain and almost blind, I headed for the shore. The hissing water leaped around me. A huge wave nearly knocked me over. But at last I reached the shore. Too tired to move, in full sight of the Martians, I waited for death. One of them was only a few feet away, but they paid no attention to me. Instead, the 4 Martian machines carried off the dead one. I was still alive. Very slowly, I realized I had escaped. Chapter 8. If they pushed on, the Martians could wipe out a whole country. Then and there, our guns had killed only one of them. We were no match for the Martians and their monster machines, but they were in no hurry. Day after day, other cylinders landed. Each one carried more Martians and more machines, for Speed seemed to be their planning center. The army worked hard to control them. Big cannons and fresh soldiers kept arriving. They took up positions in a 20-mile circle. They stayed hidden. They now knew the danger of going too near the cylinder. No one went closer than a mile, except a few brave scouts. The scouts sent signals to the soldier. The Martians spent the next day working. They put everything from the second and third cylinder into their pit. They were planning their next move. I headed for London. I was lucky enough to find an empty boat. Water was my best chance to escape the monsters. I paddled with my burned hands. After a while, I had to stop. I felt tired and sick. I lay down in the grass and slept. Then I opened my eyes. I saw a dirty man sitting near me. Have you any water? I asked. I felt very thirsty. He shook his head. You've been asking for water for an hour, he said. Then we stared at each other. We each made a strange sight. His light blue eyes had an empty look. What does it mean? He asked. Are these monsters everywhere? What are we to do? He was very upset. You must keep your head, said I. This seal of hope. I tried to explain my plan, but he could not listen long. His mind was far away. How can we escape the Martians and their machines? He asked at last. They are too big and too strong. The stronger they are, the more calm we must be, I answered. From far away came the sound of guns. Listen, he said. We had better get away from here, I said. Henry followed me north. Henry was my new friend. Soon we saw two of the huge metal Martians. They held heat rays. Henry ran in a panic. I knew running wouldn't help, so I crawled into a ditch to hide. Henry saw me and did the same. All was still. We waited for the shooting to start, but it didn't. We could see the huge machines walking away from us. We did not know what was happening around us. We did not know that another cylinder had landed. We did not know that London was in danger now, so we kept on going north toward London. Chapter 9. Henry and I talked very little. I kept thinking about my wife. Was she safe? Did she think I was dead? I made up my mind to head toward Leatherhead. Things had gotten quiet. We started to feel almost safe. Then we saw some people running. A moment later, we saw a Martian machine very close to us, high above some houses. We hid in the first place we could find, a shed in a garden. Henry sat down and cried. He wouldn't move, but I was in a rush to get to Leatherhead. I had to find my wife. So I left Henry in the shed. I started on my way again. Henry came hurrying after me. Both of us should have stayed in the shed. As soon as we left, we saw the Martian machine again. It was picking up people one by one, putting them into a metal bag, the way we might pick fruit or flowers. At first, Henry and I just stood there, too horrified to move. Now the Martians were taking people alive? What would they do to them? We hid in a ditch until dark. In darkness, we could sneak out safely. When had we last eaten? We broke into an empty house. There was no food in it, but we found water to drink. Next house we tried had a lot to eat. Bread, meat, beans, and soup. Lucky for us, we were trapped in that house for 2 weeks. After we had eaten a good meal, we felt better. All at once, there was a glare of bright green light, then a thud and the crash of glass. Plaster fell from the ceiling. It knocked me out for a while. Henry helped me sit up. I could see that the room was still dark. Don't move, he whispered. There's glass all over the floor. If you move, you'll make noise, and I think they are out there. We sat in silence. We heard the sound of metal rattling outside. A Martian, Henry said. We sat still at night, all night, wondering what was going on. In the morning, we saw most of the house had caved in. I looked through a crack. A Martian machine was standing outside. Next to it was a spaceship. Another cylinder, I whispered. It landed right on this house. And it buried us inside. God have mercy on us. He started to cry again. There was no sound but his sobs. I stayed as still as can be. Then came hammering from outside. Then hooting. Then hissing. What could be making these noises? We did not know. I must have fallen asleep. It was dawn when I awoke, and he sat with his eye next to the hole. I crept over and touched his arm. He jumped. A mass of plaster fell with a loud crash. Would the Martians hear? The two of us hid, but the plaster had left a bigger crack. Now both of us could see outside at the same time. I saw the cylinder. It had made a big pit when it landed, just as the first spaceship had. Its landing had smashed many houses. Most of this house was smashed as well. But somehow, the rooms we were in had been saved. Large Martian machine was digging. It was making the pit bigger. It made hissing noises. Machine looked like a huge spider. It had 5 legs and many tentacles. It used the tentacles to do its work. It moved quickly and perfectly. At first I thought it was alive, but it was metal. It had to be a machine. More amazing were the strange creatures near it. They were crawling around very slowly, as if moving hurt them. They were the real Martians. They were nothing but huge, round heads, no bodies. Each had a face in front. On it were 2 eyes and a beak. No nose. Round the beak was 16 thin tentacles. The back of the head was 1 big ear. The Martians had no legs. They tried to get up on their tentacle, but on Earth, they were too heavy to do it. I know now what was inside each huge Martian's head: a brain, lungs, and a heart. That's all. They had no stomach. They did not eat the way we do, so they didn't need stomach. They were heads, just heads. How did they live? What they did was not pretty. I saw them do it. They took blood from live animals, mostly humans. They injected it into themselves. Seeing this made me sick. But I will tell you more when I get to that. There are probably no green plants on Mars. The Martians had brought seeds with them. Bright red weeds grew from these trees. They grew very big. In the pit, I saw the red weeds start out small. It covered all the sides of the pit after only 4 days. Later, I saw the same plants everywhere I went. Wherever there was water, anyway, we were trapped inside the house. A door led outside, but it opened only a little. Anyway, we could not leave without being seen. The Martians were everywhere. They didn't need to sleep, so we had no chance to sneak away. All Henny and I could do was watch the Martians closely. I probably saw more of them than any other person did. Sometimes they talked without sound. That is, they read each other's minds. At other times they made howls like sirens, up and down the scale from note to note. The Martians had no bodies for clothes. What they wore were their machines. I mean, the Martian was inside each machine. They control the machine the way a human runs a bicycle or a car. These Martians were almost all brain. They made machines to do the things they could not do. The end.